thank you, and welcome to the April 20th, 2021 meeting of the Readfield Select Board. Appreciate everybody joining us this evening. We're meeting remotely because of an increase in Kennebec County of COVID, and just as a caution, other boards are doing something similar, and each town is trying to take its own guidance and doing that. And when we did the agenda planning, it seemed to be the safest way to go for us. I'll start off by asking for any comment or motion on the minutes of the Select Board meeting of March 29th, 2021.
I'll move acceptance as submitted.
Okay, it's been moved to, is there a second on that?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes for March 29th as presented in the board packet. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. By the way, Dennis Price is absent tonight. So Chris?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
And Bruce is a yes. Thank you. And just a reminder to anybody who might be watching, we're required under remote meetings to call a roll on all votes. We'll proceed with warrants 40 through 43. Chris, how are you?
Pretty good.
Go ahead. Take us down the warrant road.
Okay, Ralph did 40 through 41.
Okay, so I'll let Ralph speak to that then and yield to him. Go ahead, Ralph.
Real quick, number 40, 355, 511, and 47. And warrant 41, which is payroll, 17,783.29. Highlights for warrant number 40 are 28,137.66, which is a Cushing progress payment for winter maintenance. 7,855.20 to MMA for insurance, workman's comp, and training conference. RSU 38, 302.909.02. Some cemetery tree work for Stevenson at 2,500, and disposal hauling fees at the transfer station for waste management, 7,894.72. Aggregate amount, 373,294.76, and I would move approval of the aggregate amount and the individual warrants as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve warrants 40 and 41 in the amount of $373,294.76. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Chris?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
And Bruce casts a yes. Warrant 40, 42 and 43.
Okay, 42 was the accounts payable. 43 was the payroll. And the accounts payable was 46,162.52. We had state fees of 8,357.66. Payroll of 16,982 for a total of 63,063.34. And of note was the $5,000 we gave to David Matson. The Readfield Enterprise Fund awarded him funds to take his business to the next step. And we bought a door for the fire department for $6,800. I move to approve this warrant.
I'll second.
I'm assuming you were moving the amount that's in the packet. So I'll go ahead and take that motion that it's been moved and seconded to approve warrants 42 and 43 in the amount of $63,063.34. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Chris?
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes,
Catherine,
Yes.
Bruce is a yes. Gotta remember to answer my own question there. Great. We'll move on to Select Board Communications. Dennis is not here, but he would mention something about Heritage Days. So I'll just get that out there quickly. Always looking for volunteers. Any other members of the board have anything they would like to share?
Yes. Let me get back.
Please do, Catherine.
Eric, do you have something in your report tonight from the broadband committee?
I don't.
Okay. Then I would like to make a very short report from them, and I just need to read that from an email. Sorry, I'm almost there. So the Readfield Broadband Committee has met once since we last met. And that committee approved the language that was in the town meeting warrant and supported it completely in terms of having a non-binding vote as well as the amounts that were put into the budget. Those amounts were for mailings and a small amount for consulting fees. The WKLCDA has been meeting regularly, and we have reached a point now where we are asking for each town to make consideration of using the amount of money that's coming from the federal government to use for something related to the COVID operations of the town or for infrastructure improvement, to go ahead and do the engineering and pole make-ready phase for each town. All towns have agreed to ask their select boards to use those funds for that, and that would give us a firm price. So we would know exactly what it would cost, because it would put the process out through the RFP. We would have bids back, and then we would know that it's an amount that we can find a way to work with or that we cannot. And so that's something that we would like to put on to the next agenda. We also have a survey that we're going to put out in the next couple of weeks, giving some more information to town residents and giving more feedback so the select board can make a better decision. And that would include forming an interlocal agreement where the 6 towns would agree to follow through the process to the point of, sorry about my answering machine, to the point of getting the engineering done so that we could all decide if we're going to go through this project together or not. It would be dependent upon funding for each town. So more to come on that in the future.
Thank you, Catherine. And, I would encourage the Broadband Ad Hoc Committee to go ahead, and even if their meeting minutes are in draft form, to go ahead and try to get them into the next select board packet, just because it would give us additional information. And I know they've had a few meetings, I believe. And I have seen rough notes from them, so I know that there's some minutes or whatever that are out there. Anybody else have anything that they would like to add tonight? Okay, we'll move on to boards, committees, commissions, and departments. I want to thank the Cobussy Watershed District for the information they forwarded to us. I'd like to thank the library board for their minutes of March 3rd, 2021. And of note within that is they're actually celebrating their 75th birthday as a library. So that's pretty exciting. The Budget Committee, again, for their very thorough minutes of March 11th, 2021. And thank you for the Recreation Board of your most recent meeting, your April 8th, 2021 minutes. I'm now opening it to the public for any communication that members of the public may have. And before I do that, was there anybody from any of these boards that was here to just follow up or speak on anything in regards to those 4 items? Okay, we'll go to public comment then. I'll recognize Rob Peel.
Hello, thanks for letting me in. The reason I joined in tonight was
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, the reason I joined in was I saw the item on the anadromous fish. And so I want to encourage the select board before they make any kind of decisions or take any vote regarding anadromous fish to make sure they hear all sides of this issue. There are people that feel very strongly that DMR should continue its moves to bring anadromous fish back to some of these lakes. And there is certainly scientific information available to indicate that it would be beneficial for the lakes. So that's all I wanted to say. I just want to make sure that we don't have a one-sided discussion before decisions are made on this. Can't hear you, Bruce.
I muted myself because I've been told I have a loud fan. And that's not a fan club, by the way. It's a computer fan. But in any case, thank you, Rob, for that, for those remarks. And we'll take that to heart and try to make sure that we have some sort of balanced, if there even comes to some decision-making on this or recommendation at a board level, we'll make sure to get that input. And I will personally circle back to you to find out where we might find that input. How's that sound?
That sounds good to me.
Okay, great. Any other members of the public here would like to address the select board or ask a question or make a remark? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along then. This is the main show, and this is why everybody's here tonight, is to get appointed to stuff. And I do appreciate you all being here. We've sort of waived appointment interviews, if you will, but it's delightful that you are here. Just it's a little bit more difficult, if you will, given doing these remotely. But we'll do the best we can. So first up is the appointment of Jackie Druin to the Trails Committee, an ever popular committee, I must say. Jackie, do you want to just introduce yourself? And if anybody wants to ask a question of you, they may.
Hi, I'm Jackie Druin, 214 Fog Road, Readfield. I'm newly retired and I would like to be part of the community. And this is the perfect fit for me because I like trails. So any questions?
Oh, you mentioned hard work, Jackie. That sounds like what the Trails Committee like.
Well,
so very good.
Good.
Is there anybody else want to speak to Jackie?
Just thank her for volunteering.
My pleasure. Thanks for considering me.
Great. I'll move that we appoint Jackie Druin to the Trails Committee for a term that runs 2 years. So it would be through...
22,
Is it a 2-year term on this one?
23?
I was looking at Steve Hayes, which is next up.
Yeah.
Is this a 2-year term, Eric? Do you know? Oh,
I'm just looking through the paperwork. It should say on it.
It says through 6/30/2022. So that's the heart of my motion.
Second.
May I have a second?
Second?
Great.
Thank
Chris?
you.
Chris?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Yes.
Catherine? And Bruce is a yes. Thank you and welcome, Jackie.
Thank
And,
you.
in advance to all appointees who are here tonight, you're more than welcome to stay for the complete long meeting. You're also more than welcome to just blink right out. We're now considering the appointment of Steve Hayes to the Trails Committee. Hi, Steve.
How you doing?
Are you really outside?
I am really outside on my deck. It seemed like too nice a day. After spending the day in a windowless cubicle known as my office, I decided it was wonderful to enjoy at least this part of it on the deck.
Well, I think, Steve, if you had just tilted your camera a little bit and got rid of the deck, you could have said, I'm actually volunteering on the trail as we speak. And then how could we refuse that? So I'm going to ask Steve to introduce yourself and perhaps say a little bit about why you'd like to serve in trails and if anybody has a question.
Okay. I think, well, this may be only the second time select board meeting I've attended since I got off the board in 1995. So it's interesting to come back. Although we may have had some joint meetings during the 12 years I was on the school board. I don't know. But I'm here because for the last year, almost every day I have been out walking our trails. And I have come to enjoy them. And we've got a wonderful resource. And when I saw the vacancies and the need for help, decided it was time to stand up and pitch in to help protect and improve the trails that I use.
That's great. Anybody have a question for Steve?
No, just thank you, Steve, for once again volunteering to help out with the town.
Yeah, you've done that in a lot of different capacities, Steve, over the years, and I appreciate it as well. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to appoint Steve Hayes to the Trails Committee for a term that runs through 6/30/2022.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the roll if there's no discussion. Okay, no discussion. Chris?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Catherine?
yes.
And I'm a yes as well. And again, the same little thing, Steve, you can actually leave and still count this as your attendance every 20 years or whatever to a select board meeting. Okay.
Well, I
I'm sure
had
there's more
about
frequent.
35 consecutive years of meetings in town.
Yeah.
And I've kind of enjoyed the last 6 off. So
I understand.
we will see. Thank you very much for your willingness to move forward and serve.
Thank you.
And good night.
Good night.
Good night.
We're going to consider the appointment of Gary Keelty as a full member of the comp plan. And we're also going to consider the appointment of Bruce Hunter to the comp plan committee. I believe neither of them are here and they don't need to be. Gary is already an alternate. We had a vacancy due to the resignation of Greg Durgan. And we also had the application of Bruce Hunter to serve on the comp plan committee. And there was a memo in your packet suggesting that it would seem that the order, and of course it's up to the desires of the board, but it would make sense to ask Gary, who's been an alternate serving, to step into the role of a full member and to appoint Bruce Hunter as an alternate. And I say that with full knowledge that we expect alternates on that comp plan committee to fully participate in meetings. And obviously, if there's ever a meeting where somebody is short, they vote and are full participants. So that's the role there.
I would make a motion to appoint Gary Kelty as a full member of the Comprehensive Plan Committee and to appoint Bruce Hunter as the new alternate to the Comprehensive Plan Committee.
Boy, I like getting those both into one motion like that, Catherine. You're so efficient. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing
I
none,
will
Chris?
second the motion.
Yes.
I think Chris seconded the motion
I
already,
second
right?
it, Ralph.
Okay.
Okay, so Chris,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. We'll consider the resignation of Janet Tarbuck from the library board. Her brief note is in your packet. I'll just take a motion in regards to her resignation from the library board of trustees, which I'm assuming will open up an opening on the library board.
I'll make a motion to accept with regrets the resignation of Janet Tarbuck from the Library Board of Trustees effective April 30th.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to regretfully accept the resignation of Janet Tarbuck from the Library Board of Trustees. Thank you, Janet, for your service. Is there any discussion on the matter? Chris,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
and yes for me as well. Let's take a look here. Eric, do we have items we can reorder on new business? We don't have any old business, by the way.
You can reorder any of them. Yeah.
Yeah, who's here for what, I guess? I know Romaine is probably here to talk about the AARP grant application. Is Mr. Stevens here for any particular?
He's likely here for the, well, he's an introduction. He's our new code officer, but,
Well, that'd be
and
good.
I can get to that, but he's here for the septic question.
Well,
The
that's
first one.
next.
Okay, then we'll proceed with that, and then we'll go to the AARP item. Great. So let's consider the approval of the shoreland septic holding tank for map 106, lot 70. If you could introduce us to Mr. Stevens and any background on this. We did receive in our packet a fairly lengthy and technical bit of information.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I am very pleased to introduce Chip Stevens as the new code officer for the town of Readfield. He was one of several applicants and was the most qualified and brings with him a decade of experience on a local planning and zoning board from his home state of Connecticut. He's also a long-time summer resident and over the last year or so full-time resident, more or less, in the town of Readfield. So he has a lot of planning experience, served as the chair of that board for a few years at least. And has a really good understanding of some of the issues that we're facing. If we're going to go through it, he's probably been through it. And he certainly recognizes and appreciates, you know, what we're dealing with, the fact that shoreland is very important. All of the things that we as a town are looking to continue to protect and improve upon. So I'm really happy that Chip's with us. And this particular issue is actually something that's a holdover from 2 code officers ago, where a permit was issued but never properly vetted and approved by the select board. So this one does need to be basically cleaned up at an administrative level, but I'll let Chip add anything he might want to say and also give his own introduction.
Please do introduce yourself, Chip, and if you have something to speak to in regards to this one, please do.
Okay. Well, thank you for the kind comments, Eric. I appreciate it. And thank you all for having me. As Eric said, I've been on a planning and zoning board in many different roles over the last 10, 12 years. And when I moved up here last year, after coming up here all my life, I was very excited to see there was an opening, and I'm very glad to be here and take it. Cliff Buck has been very good over the last 2 weeks, taking me around. And one of our first visits was to this garage over on Main Street, and holding the tape while he stood out in the middle of the road to measure the setbacks. We discovered there was a problem. We knew there was a problem, but we confirmed it. And we've been working with the new future owner who wanted to clean this all up before so he could close on the property. Had a very pleasant conversation with him today. We sent him a copy of this consent agreement, which we forged this week. He was willing to do it and move forward. And I believe that it's going to make the property much more attractive. Hopefully the Tyvek siding becomes more attractive, and the erosion around the place will be taken care of. Again, this is just an administrative kind of move. And if we don't take it in the future, there could be problems on both sides. So I think it's a very good consent agreement. I think we get it done, we can move on to other issues, which I've discovered are more exciting in this town over the next few weeks. And I would urge the Board of Selectmen to accept it.
So Bruce, I did mix.
We're speaking of 2 different items then, right?
Exactly.
Forgive
Okay,
me.
good. And that's quite all right, because we want to deal with both of them, and they're both under your purview, I believe. So
Yes.
we have the consent agreement, which is for map 112, lot 071, and that's what Chip Stevens just spoke to. So we can take a motion on The motion should state what, Eric, on this particular item?
That the board supports the
We
consent
confirm the
agreement.
consent agreement.
Yep.
Okay. I will make that motion that the board accepts and confirms this consent agreement to be carried out.
I'll second that. Could we add in the names, Bruce, to your motion of Kenneth and Sandra Poland and the
Please,
town of
yes,
Readfield?
yes. I'm on the wrong page anyhow, so,
That's okay. It was the last item on the agenda. It's
right.
fine.
Sorry.
So I did second that.
Great. So it's been moved and seconded to approve that consent agreement. Is there any discussion on it? Thank you. I'll call the roll. Chris,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Bruce. Oh, yes. Deer in the headlights. Let's move on to 21-109. That's the Shoreland Septic Holding Tank. And I don't know if that's one that Chip is speaking to as well, or if Eric, if that's one that was sitting in progress already.
That one's been in progress for quite some time. As I had noted earlier, this is an approval that was granted by prior code enforcement officer. But just as we approved one of these, I think last meeting, it's an administrative function of the select board to confirm that process because it does involve the shoreline. It's one of the special protections we have, having that dual layer of review. So.
Okay.
I would
Great.
make a motion to approve the subsurface wastewater disposal system variance request for Ann Latusha as presented.
And I'll second that. And then I'll just go ahead and ask Chip if he had any comment on that as well.
No, again,
No.
these are one of those situations where we look back and said, maybe we should have done something different. But I believe the Latushkas have a very sound system there. And hopefully moving forward, we can track these closer so we can discuss these before they actually are there. But I would urge the board to approve this. I believe everything's in line, is working well, and that's it.
Great. Thank you, Chip. Okay, we have the motion on the floor and it's been duly seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Chris,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Bruce. Yes. Hi, Romaine. We're going to go down to considering approval for the AARP grant application by the Age Friendly Committee. The Age Friendly Committee has been, what, 4, 5 years running now? Something like that? And you brought in a lot of grant money over the years. And so this is just the latest grant. And so I'm delighted to, I think the procedure is we want to basically second, if you will, the application, approve the application. It's in an application process, right?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Would you like to talk a couple minutes about the highlights?
Sure. I'll give you a brief overview. Again, the application has been submitted, and we should know in June whether we will receive the funding. We asked for about $6,500. Not a biggie, but every little bit counts. It's an AARP challenge grant, and we submitted the application under the category of social impact. It's a social impact goal, which is to increase social connections among residents. And there is another subcategory that we chose that would create vibrant public places. So again, we're trying to focus on downtown Readfield and make it more of a community. We submitted requests in 3 areas. One area has to do with the library. And I will say Melissa was very helpful. The librarian was very helpful in putting this part of the application together. She's a great asset. I can't say enough about Melissa. And what we proposed was to really making the outside and the back more inviting for people who, by adding some chairs and a table with an umbrella. So when people are waiting to go into the library, because we're limiting numbers to get in, they have a place to sit. It's a place for people who come to use the Wi-Fi in the back to sit outside rather than in their cars. And then we also proposed getting some kind of awning. So if there's a guest author or some kind of presentation, they're covered. And Melissa also proposed adding some Adirondack chairs to the front of the library lawn. So, people who walking by or whatever can just go on the lawn and sit. So that's basically what we included for the library. Then we moved to the beach. And I had some brief conversations. This part is not as fleshed out as it could have been, but I included in there, since it's the age-friendly committee, a floating kayak dock that would be in the water near the kayak racks and canoe racks. And I had never seen one of these before, but they're really actually like a floating dock that you can put your kayak on and pull yourself out. So it's easier to get in and out.
I love it.
I thought it was a great idea. Although I would probably would cause me to tip my kayak rather than help me, but I'll give it a try. And then we proposed adding 6 red Adirondack chairs to the beach. And the whole notion came as we were talking about it, is like Hallowell has such an inviting area downtown Hallowell where there are all those different color Adirondack chairs, and people go and use those all the time. So we thought this was, we just were winging it, but we thought it would be really, really nice at the beach to have 6 Adirondack chairs on the water or a little bit back. I mean, it might attract people to walk down there and sit and watch the water. It doesn't have to be just an area for swimming or kayaking. And then the third area really helps support the Maranacook Food Pantry. And it's a very simple request to buy a food cart to help the volunteers get the food out of the school into the cars. I guess they have an old food cart that's broken down 3 times. And also to buy some more sandwich boards, placards, so bigger, better, stronger placards. So there's better promotion of the food pantry for people. So those are the 3 areas.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate that it has a varied, if you will, impacts in different areas of the town. So it's not just solely focused on one thing, but it kind of brings up the level for several functions. That's very nice.
Kind
Can I have a
of
motion?
moved it away from the fairgrounds a bit and into the community.
Yeah. May I have a motion in regards to this?
Yes, I would like to support Romaine's application, which I thought was outstanding. It was long and I read the whole thing, and I like the red chair concept. That was great promotion there. Should help get you the grant. So I would like to make a motion to accept the 2021 AARP Community Challenge application as presented in our packet in the amount of $6,556.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve application for the AARP Challenge Grant. Is there any discussion? I'll just add one thing, and I know other people, you went to other people like Melissa and talked to them. So whoever they are, thank you so much for participating, giving us that information.
Well, the other person is Greg Durgan, who was a real advocate for the food pantry.
Great. Thank you very much, Greg. Chris,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you very much, Romaine.
Thanks, Romaine.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Good to see
Yeah.
As you just
Bye.
right. So in my haste of really moving through this agenda rapidly, I'm doing so well tonight. I completely skipped over your town staff reports, Eric. The floor is yours.
I was going to mention it, but I figured I'd give you a little time.
Yeah, I reread my agenda and check back when I'm going back and forth like this to make sure I didn't miss anything, and I obviously did miss that. So please, the floor is yours.
That's okay. I'll just give a few brief comments. So we do have the check reconciliation completed for the month of March. It's not included in this warrant. It will be in the next one, or in this meeting. It will be in the next packet. We had an issue where there was a $41 discrepancy, and it took us, a week plus to really get down and figure out where it was. It turns out it was just a transcription error on a hand entry. So everything's looking good, but that's why we don't have a full report for the month of March, is because of that issue that's been
And that's the
resolved.
treasurer's
So
report you're speaking to.
yes, that's right. Yeah. With respect to the town manager's report, I have a few things that I want to go over. Seasonally appropriate. First is fire permits. We've had a lot of folks asking about open burning. Every spring, we typically have a period where, even though the ground may be wet, the snow may have just left, we may have a sprinkle or two come through. The ground conditions still are quite dry. And the leaves are not out on the trees, so they don't have that natural fire defense that you'd expect. So very often in the springtime, we don't have any burn permits being issued. That is the case right now. So I just want folks to be aware that as soon as the fire chief and the state of Maine believe that we've come to a place where we can safely do that, we will. If it's actively raining or snowing, hopefully no more of that. But if either one of those things are happening, you can typically get a permit online. But outside of those conditions, we're not issuing them quite yet. So that's the first thing. The other item is that I am going to encourage folks to continue to be diligent when it comes to COVID. We have seen an uptick in cases in the state of Maine. It looks like we might be on the downtrend, but you never know. It's always hard to judge these things. But one thing that is evident is this increase in infection rates, especially among young people, which is something that's a little bit concerning, but also something that's known and aware. Dr. Shah has explained some of the reasoning behind this increase. Regardless of what the reasons are, it's happening, and we do want folks to stay diligent, continue to be socially distant at the town office, at the transfer station, wear their masks, and practice proper hand hygiene. So those are all things that it's nice out. We're able to get outside more, but we want to encourage everybody in town to continue to be diligent when it comes to COVID. So I went over burn permits. Let's see. Beach permits, we are also getting ready to start issuing those. Things are a little bit different than they have been in the past, given the fact that we did vote to make the beach free to Readfield residents at the June 2021 town meeting. So permits will be issued. We will be sending out notices to folks that have already come in and paid or from out of towners. But it is important to note that if you're not a Readfield resident, you do need to pay to use the beach. And that includes, at this point, guests of Readfield residents. In the past, if you bought a beach pass, you were able to bring in a couple people 4 or 5 times a summer at no cost. But given the whole dynamic and the way that this was structured financially, we are setting things up so that if you're a Readfield resident, you never have to pay to use the beach. If you're a guest, then you might need to get a day pass, or you might want to get a week pass. But in order to make all of this work out and to minimize the impacts on taxpayers, we are taking that approach. So I just wanted folks to be aware up front that if you do bring guests in and they're not Readfield residents, that there will be a small fee associated with their use of the beach. It's something like $5 a day. It's not a lot. So moving on to other seasonal activities. road sweeping is expected to be happening before mid-May. That's when we usually see that work happening, at least over the past 2 or 3 years. Everybody would like to see it happen sooner, but the company that we have been working with and have an agreement with, they typically don't get to us until just about that time. So I want folks to know that it is on the schedule. We are working on it, and it will be happening about the same time as it has the last couple of years, despite a little bit earlier spring. So that is underway. Also, with respect to roads and maintenance, we will be having a road striping RFP and a crack sealing RFP going out before the end of April for those two important services, so those can happen over the summer and we can get the most benefit out of them. The next item I have is relating to staff. I did already introduce Chip, and again, I'm really happy to have him on board. We also made a hire for the clerk position, which is a critical position in the town. We're happy to announce that Shireen Gilman will be joining our staff, and she interviewed with us along with several other applicants, but came with a very strong set of parallel skills. It was difficult to find anybody in the field that had a full certification or even partial, but Shireen brings a lot of really solid administrative and customer relations experience that I think will be a very good fit for us in the town of Readfield. She's also a neighbor. She comes from Mount Vernon and has spent some time, a few years anyway, working with their select board, which is much more hands-on than our form of government, where the board is more of a policy, branch. So she does have a lot of that, physical interaction that you would want to see from a clerk. So I'm pleased to make that announcement as well. Moving on, we have, I guess, the other staff-related piece. We did make a hire, Ontario, for our seasonal 3-season maintenance staff person. He lives up on Church Road, so we're really excited to have him on board. And the final staff-related announcement is that we're working with Goodwill Industries to bring on some folks that have some needs for job training. And our maintenance crews and the work that they do in the field is actually a really good place for some of those folks to learn some job skills and also, do some work that benefits the town of Readfield. This is a program similar to what we've done in the past through the state of Maine, where folks come in and, their wages are paid by the state of Maine, but they're working basically for the town of Readfield. And there are some other intermediaries there as well. But long story short, we have an opportunity to help some folks learn some job skills and get some staff time out in the field for our maintenance and road and cemetery work. So it's a win-win, I guess, is the way I look at it. And then the last thing I want to note, which is seasonally appropriate that we're done with plowing, I hope, is that we did have the road plowing RFP deadline last Thursday, and we received 0 results.
Oh,
So that was a disappointing and a bit surprising outcome for us. However, we are right back on it. We've reopened the process and we'll have about a month of additional review time. We will have another pre-bid meeting and we'll see if anything comes through with that second phase. If not, we have a couple of other opportunities. We will be looking at talking with the town attorney about the possibility of direct negotiations with a number of vendors. We might also look at changing the term of the contract to a single year and seeing if we can attract folks that way. But it's a big concern for me, but one I think that we're prepared to deal with in a progressive manner to get the results that we're looking for, which is to have a good, reliable contractor in place, hopefully no later than midsummer, so they can be prepared to come in the late fall and provide this service for us.
Eric, is there
So that's my report.
Is there an advertising challenge or a wider net that we can cast on that?
That's part of our current effort. We don't believe we came up short with the advertising. We put it on the Maine Municipal website. We reached out directly to over a dozen local contractors and construction firms that have done this work or have the equipment to do this work. So we don't believe it's a question of outreach. It might be a question of capacity or uncertainty as people come out of the COVID situation, not knowing about making hires, things like that. The booming construction industry might have people thinking that they'll be working all winter. It's hard to say exactly, but in any event, you're
Okay.
absolutely right that we're going to be broadening that net and doing a little bit more selling, I guess, if you will, talking to some of the contractors.
Okay, excellent. And I guess I will just say, in addition to the report that Eric gave on new hires, that I did sit on the interview committee for the town clerk. It's a real key position. I think Eric's made an excellent hire there. I'm very pleased to see Shireen coming aboard. I do have some past experience with her. That didn't influence my choice, but we did serve on the school board together many years ago. So she's quite connected, if you will, into governance and so forth. So that's great. Thank you, Eric. Any other questions for Eric? Okay, we'll move on to considering signing the final and complete June 8, 2021 town meeting warrant. We took votes on all our recommendations last time. This is just simply the pro forma follow-up to make sure everybody's given everything one more read and to basically take a vote that we're going to proceed with signing that warrant so it can be appropriately posted.
May I ask a question?
Please do.
So at our last meeting, we had approved this moving forward with certain changes that could be made by the town manager. I see that some of those have been inserted. I'm just asking, is the Kents Hill School a confirmed site, Eric?
That
Yes.
is a confirmed site. So that's been confirmed with the headmaster, Chris Cheney.
Great. And I see that we have candidates in for 2 of the 3 different committees or boards that have openings. And I
Yes.
assume that is all of those that we have to date.
That is all, and that's all we will have unless there are any write-in campaigns. One of the reasons we have this coming back before the board is the fact that when you approved this last time or looked at this last time, we did not have those. The deadline was, I think, a week ago Friday. And so we do have those final names, and they have been reviewed. All the signatures, all of that has been reviewed and approved by Kristen as the interim clerk.
Okay. And we did receive feedback on the bond issue question.
Yes. Yep. We're all set on that.
Awesome. I would make a motion then to accept the annual town meeting warrant secret ballot as proposed and authorize us to sign it.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the warrant secret ballot as presented in the packet and to recommend it or to direct the select board to sign it so it may be posted. Okay, any discussion on that motion? Seeing none. Chris,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Bruce is a yes. Thank you for all the hard work and refining. You spend a lot of time developing the budget and so on and so forth, and then it's all got to kind of get refined down to warrant language and review, and then there's these little nuances at the very end. And so, Eric, thank you for all your work in regards to this.
Thank you. Teresa was a great help, and Kristen as well, stepping in and helping out with the interim clerk work.
And I extend that thank you to them as well.
And all the committees that worked on it as well.
Yep.
Are we planning on a informational flyer to be going out? And would that include any of the ordinance language that was the extra 25 pages in our packet?
I think Bruce would probably ask you to hold that for the next. But yes, that's part of this, is that we will be sending out that notification with the explanation. We typically don't send out the full ordinance language given the length that's involved, but we always do, if we can, put in the links to where folks can find it on the website. But that can be something the board can discuss, and if you want to have a different tack on it, we'll go whatever direction the board decides.
Thank you.
You know, I actually don't mind holding that discussion right now and disposing of that bit of business. And so that's just a matter of Eric preparing that guidance. Well, it's typically been like a 4-pager, I believe.
We take what we usually do is take the actual articles and throw in a sentence of explanation, maybe 2 on each of them. I think the most we ever got into was around some of the marijuana ordinance language we had from last year. But usually it's a very brief explanation and only if it's necessary. And then we reference the additional ordinance where you can find that full text. And also there's typically a cover letter from the board or from the chair of the board kind of discussing the budget process, your aspirations, so on.
When would we typically send that out?
I would think that we'd want to get it out a couple weeks before the hearing. So I would say that it would be best to make sure that we're ready to do that, have that mailed out end of April, early May.
Okay.
Which basically means we want to wrap it up next week.
Right.
So does the board want to direct Eric to go ahead and wrap that up? And how about if we made it subject to review by the vice chair? He's not here.
That's clever. That's clever. I like it.
He's very clever.
That sounds great, Bruce. So I would make a motion to, do we need a motion or just a request?
I think a request, a consensus on that is fine. That is, if everybody's comfortable with that, we're directing Eric to add in the little bits of language to basically finalize a flyer, if you will. I call it a flyer, but it's really the warrant. And to make sure the links are in there and so on and so forth. And we'll also post that on the website. So that can be ready to go out before the hearing in a couple of weeks. And I'm just asking that that the vice chair, Dennis Price, would review that with Eric before it goes out, because he'll probably post it on Facebook as well. And I, because I volunteered, somebody else will volunteer myself as the backup to Mr. Price.
Sounds good to me.
Would we
Okay.
put the whole warrant with the explanations on the website?
Absolutely. Yeah, we typically
Yeah.
do that as well. It goes out multiple forms, multiple formats.
Okay.
Great. And I might also mention here that if you are doing town reports for anybody, I know that Kristen did put out a note on that, and I even saw somebody ask for a deadline, and it wasn't a firm deadline given, but a sort of just as early as you can kind of thing. So if you are a person who is making a report in town, in the town report for the year, and that includes myself, you're encouraged to please get that in soon. Was there a target date, Eric, that she was shooting to print that?
I mean, we like to have it available at the same time as the town meeting at the latest. So
The June 8th town meeting.
I'd have to talk to Kristen about it, and perhaps I should say that the new clerk will be starting May 4th, so that doesn't give a ton of time. So I think that this project's going to stay in Kristen's hands, but I would say that we probably don't want it much later than a couple weeks out from now. So we'll just say April.
So by the end of the month would be really
May
great.
10th, something like that. Yeah. Let's look.
Hi guys, it's Kristen.
Oh, there's Kristen.
Hi,
Yeah.
Kristen.
My deadline is to have it printed and it needs to be available 3 days before a town meeting. So I definitely want it ready before then.
Right.
but that's like the absolute deadline, but I don't want to wait that long.
So I think May 1st is a good time, or April 30th.
That would be great.
Yeah,
That's what Bruce was suggesting. That's good.
we can send that out as a strong recommendation.
Well, let's send it out as a deadline. That's what I would do. Send it out as a
Okay.
deadline.
Because there are most of us who will work to the deadline.
Yep. Well, no, if she has everything in hand, she may get Kristen, you may get a whole glut of information May 1st, but you will have time then to sort it out and work with it and contact anybody that needs to do a refinement or whatever of that nature. So thank you for piping up. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
The other item I wanted to cover under 21-111, this is another item, 21-111. So we're moving to that, which is communication strategies on the upcoming May 13th public meeting. So we'll have that information out. Is there anything else we can do? Is there anything else you had in mind, Eric? And then I want to talk about the nature of that meeting a little bit.
I think that what we have done in the past, including this mailing to voters, is a really good start. We've learned that we have a few more tools available through the website and through Facebook. So I think that we're just going to lean on those digital media more than we have in the past, and put out 2 or 3 Facebook notices and just really emphasize the fact that this is an important discussion, and that given the way things have been over the last year, we perhaps haven't had the same level of input that we would like to have seen or would have seen, and so we want to encourage this as an opportunity, and I'm sure the board will discuss whether or not you want to have it in person, but I think it's more important than it's been in the past to have people at this meeting.
Yeah, and actually that's kind of what I wanted to segue to, is about the May 13th meeting. We've not been holding select board meetings in person. I guess I would like to hear from the board what they would like to do with this public hearing. And I'll just preface that by saying, I understand that we have to be looking at the guidance in terms of COVID, but at the same time, I am concerned that, and I really do appreciate the trust that many residents have placed within us during this last year, but getting additional feedback from the public would be very useful. So I want to try to encourage that as much as possible, and I'm wondering if a floor meeting does that. And if so, then the circumstances would be, what kind of venue? Would the budget committee be open to it as well? Has the budget committee been meeting in person?
They've been remote only.
Remote only. Well, I would ask the budget chair, obviously. I guess my thought was, could we possibly have it at the school? So we could create a very socially distanced presentation. Whatever we decide, we're going to have to have a fallback of going, I think, to remote if there was a huge uptick or something like that. But or maybe we just plan from the get-go that it is going to be remote. We did it last year. We can do it again. So I'm trying to get the board's input, and I'll kind of neutrally just listen now, please.
I'd like to have it in person. There have been several town meetings in the greater Augusta area where they've held them in gymnasiums and socially distanced people, and people have shown up. I think any meeting we have needs to be concurrent on Zoom so that you try and meet the needs of people who don't want to come in person but would like to participate or at least listen.
Other members of the board, please.
Are you talking the high school for school?
Well, I'm thinking that it could be either the high school or the grade school. We obviously would have to talk to both of them. Both of them have gymnasiums. So I'm thinking that, it could be the middle school gymnasium, I suppose, as well. Although the high school, the school board has met been meeting in the student center, which is right as you enter the school, although they did not the last meeting that I watched. They actually did it as a remote. I do think Catherine's idea of some sort of hybrid situation is good, and we'd have to put in some opportunities to make sure that we pay attention to that hybrid situation so that there are questions that people have that they get answered. This is the meeting where we discuss the warrant articles. This isn't where we add or subtract money or anything like that. It's where you say, I think this warrant article should pass, or I think this warrant article should not pass, and why. And it's also a great place to ask a question about what does this warrant article mean?
Could maybe Bill give us some input on what would work from his standpoint? I know that he regularly does broadcast from the student center. I don't know if it's easy for him to do it in other spots.
Well, all my gear I take on the road. Let me turn the microphone. I do it regularly for the RSU 38, but it takes two of us to do that. So it takes an hour and a half to set up. If I'm using my equipment, I'd have to bring all the microphones and everything. So it's a pretty big deal to take the show on the road, but I can do it as long as I had enough forewarning.
And help.
Right.
So is May 13th enough forewarning, Bill? And I mean, I would certainly have no opposition to Eric assigning somebody to assist with this. Or I mean, if you have somebody you prefer that you normally use, that obviously makes sense to me as well. So, I mean, I don't think we have to get into the fine points of that, but we need to make sure that you have the resources that you need to do it.
Sure. So long as I know which building it is and the date, and I can get some time ahead before the meeting, I can do it.
Okay, so what we know then is if we're going to do it at a school, that we would be asking them for access a couple hours beforehand, and that we would try to make that determination this week, if we can do it at a school. And I can call the budget committee chair to make sure he polls his folks that they're happy with this. I do think if there was somebody that was uncomfortable that was on one of the boards and they wanted to come in, I know a hybrid situation, Bill, is probably much more of a juggle for you, but I think we want to make sure we can get all voices in if we can.
Sure. I'd have to provide reinforcement sound and the whole, it's a big deal, but I can do it.
Okay. It's a one-shot deal, though.
Yeah,
We won't
okay.
ask. We won't ask. I won't ask again.
You think we're going to have enough people come? I mean, the last time we had it in person, we could have put them 6 feet apart.
Just staying at the town office.
Yeah.
Eric,
Well,
what's our capacity?
Well, in order to maintain 6 feet of distancing, it would be somewhere around 30. And that would be a little bit creative. I think if we have the 50% capacity that the governor has said, we'd be closer to 50 people. I know that the schools typically and regularly maintain 3 feet of separation for the students. So I think that if we're looking at the 50% capacity rule, it would really be about 50 people upstairs, which would feel a little bit crowded to me, I think, given the circumstances. But I think even at 30, if we had 8 or 10 board members present, that'd probably meet our needs, but it's hard telling what kind of turnout we would get.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
kind of liking where you were going with that, Chris, that we've had such poor physical turnout, even in past years prior to COVID, that if we could do it at the town office, it makes it far less work for Bill. And if it meets our needs, not to set up a room for more people would be wise.
Yeah, I think probably part of the challenge, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the board members, because we're all need to be seated at tables. And maybe we don't need to be seated at tables.
Yeah, maybe we could do it differently.
And maybe we could, for example, be seated in a semicircle 6 feet apart and have a microphone that we walk up to. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a thought.
Or we could.
Or
be
have the
right
two
up to
chairs, the two
Yeah.
chairs have a table and everybody else kind of whatever.
Well, I can work with Bill on some alternatives there, and we can try to plan for a couple different contingencies. If
Bill,
if
you would be
that's
more comfortable.
satisfactory.
You would be more comfortable having it at town hall.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
At least, I'm just trying to think. There's so much to consider, the speakers and microphones and everything to go out on the road.
Okay. Well,
I'm willing to do that.
okay. Then let's leave the logistics to Eric and Bill to look into this a little further. Okay. I will talk to the budget committee chair to make sure they want to share in this. And then we'll figure out how we could do the hybrid thing. I'm assuming that if we had a capacity issue, that we would just have to say you're number 40 in the room and that's that. And
you can
That's right, yeah.
accomplish that going in, that we can only have so many in the.
that's right. And so at that point, you're welcome to go back home and watch it or come in by Zoom.
Just as I don't remember having more than 30 people come.
No, I don't. I don't either, but I'm trying to encourage some feedback and participation and so forth. So I think we have a direction. Okay? Great.
On a related subject, it's not on the agenda, but the idea of candidates night, that's been typically left. Well, we've usually had a few different people organizing it, but I just wanted to see if there were any thoughts on the board about that particular event. Otherwise, we'll just carry forward and handle it basically as a clerk and administrative function.
Yeah, I think it's fine. And I think that is a fine, I think that being on Zoom is fine. I mean, it would be nice if that was in person, but I see that as not secondary, but it's kind of a different, it lends itself better to broadcast because it's more of discussion with whoever's facilitating it. So I think it's a little bit of a different setup.
Okay, sure.
I would not do it the same night.
No, and that's not what we've done. And I just wanted to get some feedback on that while we had the opportunity.
That is actually what we did do last year. It was just Dennis running.
Yeah. Right. We only had one candidate last year, and we did do it right at the beginning. But I think the candidates deserve their own night. Okay, great. I'll follow up with Eric on that candidates night because I'm glad that you brought that up. That reminds me of that. So now we're looking at considering the signing of the RSU 38 warrant for the May 19th, 2020 budget meeting. That is a pro forma to basically say we've looked at their warrant and it's ready to post.
That's right.
So I'm going to go ahead and move that we sign the RSU 38 warrant and it can be proceeded to be posted by them.
Second.
Okay, great. Any discussion? Does everybody know where we ended up with the school board budget? You all received that information. So they are up a much smaller amount than we thought that they would be. But that's their job to explain at their meeting, how that affects the current year and affects possibly years going forward. So
I
great.
guess I'd just like to mention that four of the four towns, Readfield's the only town with an increase, and it's 0.07%. So
Yeah.
it's less than 1%. It's almost non-existent. So for this year, that's good news for town finances.
It's probably 20 cents in the mill rate. It's my back of the envelope, I think. But we've also done a very good job, I think, with the town side of it. And so we're looking at a pretty good situation all around. So I do appreciate that. And again, we have the increase because we have, it's a combination of valuation and it's a combination of student count that creates that, if you will, formula that they use. Great. We will, how are we doing in time? 7:41. I think we've dealt with everything except for the select board bylaws. Have I missed
You
anything
need to
else?
take a vote, Bruce.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And the vote is on the RSU 38 warrant posting. Chris,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Bruce is a yes. Thank you. We'll move on to 21.113, which is to consider a first draft of the bylaws. And actually, the way this reads on the agenda is it's a first draft revision to the select board roles and responsibility policy. And the intention is that the bylaws will completely replace the select board roles and responsibilities policy. So there will no longer be a policy by that name. The policy would be the bylaws. You have a draft. I did have some feedback from Dennis on this, and I'm eager to hear further feedback, if you will, from everybody else, if you had an opportunity to look it over. This is a first reading, and we'll have a second reading too.
I have comments, but I'll defer if anyone wants to go first. Okay. So first off, thank you, Bruce. I had asked you to try and make sure you got to this before you were finished on the board, and I really appreciate you doing it. I think it looks fantastic. So kudos for that. There are just a couple of things that I see missing. I wouldn't change anything that's there personally. Going back to the current one, it's right at the top. It's under responsibilities. The select board falls into 4 general categories, which are town finances, protection of residents, management of town property and manager, and managing relations with contractors, et cetera. I think that paragraph needs to be in there. And then also item 6 under specific duties. I didn't see anything in here, and this is what that reads. It's recruit, contract with, and supervise a town manager who will conduct much of the work of managing town business. That's a huge, to me, that's a huge part of what the select board does. And I think it should be specifically stated. Otherwise, I thought it was awesome.
Okay, where would you put, okay, so the 4 items, if you will, you would add them under purpose and scope.
Yes.
Okay, and then the other one on the town manager, recruit and supervise and evaluate, I guess, a town manager. Where would you put that?
I would probably make that another category. You know, like you have 6 categories thus far. I don't know where to insert it, but it would just be a very short one, but.
Yep. Okay, so a category on the town manager. I want to be clear on this, that my aim was not to represent every single job that the select board does, because a lot of that is encoded in law. A lot of it is also in code in terms of the form of governance you have, whether you have a 5-member board or a 3-member board or whatever. So all that stuff exists. I don't have any problem with putting these items in. I'm trying to keep this brief, to the point, and as elegant, if you will, as possible. But I don't have any objection to writing those 2 items in.
Well, you took it from 19 pages down to 3, so I would say you did a great job.
Well, there was a great deal of redundancy in that other, and also it did not approach the spirit of what I was just mentioning in terms of there are many things that are already covered in code and law, and directing select board members to read certain documents by certain dates, to me, is not what we want in our bylaws.
Nope.
You're elected to be responsible. Is there any other feedback? And is it the druthers of the board that I include those 2 things that Catherine mentioned? I have no objection to them whatsoever.
I
How about from-
have no objection to putting those in. If that's all that we're gonna add, that isn't gonna be too arduous.
It's not going to be arduous. It'll be really just a quick lift of language and a matter of a couple of sentences. Ralph, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think it's a superb job of weeding and putting the important stuff out there, and leaving a lot to the discretion of the board.
Yep. Eric, did you have any thoughts?
Very similar to what Ralph said. I appreciate the brevity and clarity that this brings, which did not exist before. So I think it's a good revision and or reincarnation, I guess, of what was there, and I'm happy with it.
Great. And I think codifying a little bit in the bylaws, if you will, our relationship with you does make sense. So we'll go ahead and make sure to put that in. So I'll have a second reading for you next month, if that's okay with you.
Yep,
Sounds
Okay.
great.
yep, looks good.
May I have a motion?
That took a lot less time.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could have gone through it line by line, but everybody read it. And we had some good suggestions from you, Catherine. And so we will have another look at this and another opportunity to mull what it is and what it represents. And if anything else happens to be missing, we can catch it in a second reading. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn this meeting. Chris?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Chris is a yes. Thank you so much this evening. And thank you for everyone who decided to stay on and listen.